Another Wednesday in the books, which means another review of AEW Dynamite on the Squared Circle Psycho Babble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti for news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling. Subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. So, Ralph, we got the in-ring debut of Lance Archer on this episode. The brackets for the TNT Championship Tournament released in its entirety, and some pretty good matches in between. But I want to start off with this Lance Archer debut because personally, I thought it was absolutely perfect. It was right before the match. Jake Roberts cuts another amazing promo on Cody Rhodes, saying that Brandy Rhodes wears the pants in the relationship. Lance Archer comes out against possibly the best opponent that he could have for his debut, and that is Marko Stunt. And props to Marko Stunt that he actually just... He sold, or the laws of physics sold for him, as Archer just threw him around like a rag doll, making him show how strong Archer could be and what a threat he could be. I thought it was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely were going to try to highlight him in some type of squash match, and I know a lot of people aren't necessarily fans of Marko Stunt, but I mean, this is really where he was utilized pretty well. I mean, the whole point of him being extremely undersized against a guy like Lance Archer, who's obviously much bigger, much stronger, much more intimidating, was for it to be a squash match. That's why they have matches like this, to enhance the character or the dominance of another guy. And yes, granted, all of the things I just talked about, Lance Archer being the bigger, stronger guy, that's not necessarily an impressive win, but it helps kind of establish the dominance that you can expect from him. So what I expect is next week, once they start that tournament, first round going against Cole Cabana, I think he's going to have another strong showing. So yeah, I didn't have an issue with this at all. It wasn't like Marko Stunt got in a ton of offense, and when he did, it was mostly kind of fluky offense. So no issues with that.
Yeah, I think out of the entire match, Marko Stunt maybe got 3 kicks in total. The Enziguri that he caught Archer by surprise, and a couple drop kicks after that, but then Archer just threw him around a couple more times. I really love the release suplex that we got. Just completely awesome there. I mean, and of course, after the match, he chokeslams him, not off the ring onto the floor, but across the guardrail.
Yeah.
It was just perfect. I just thought it really showcased how good Lance Archer could be and make him feel like a real threat. And Marko Stunt, give him props for taking such a beating. And, they go ahead.
I was just going to say, so you think it highlighted how good he can actually be. I think it was good in the sense that it highlighted how dominant of a force he can be, especially going into this feud that they've got going on between him and Cody. But I certainly know from watching him in New Japan that this isn't the best of him, and that they're going to save what he's actually made of for that feud, or maybe next week, and kind of build to the point where he starts actually having some really good matches. So, I'm definitely looking forward to this. I love the way they're utilizing him to this point. It goes to show you how week in and week out, when you follow like a linear storyline and you build towards things, and you make somebody feel important with these types of matches, how good it can do for somebody's character, enhancing their character in comparison to like what WWE does with their big guys like Braun Strowman. Granted, Strowman is going to be challenging for the championship.
That's a rumor.
But
that's a rumor. It hasn't been confirmed yet.
Right. It is a rumor. They're still promoting Roman Reigns in the match for the championship there. But I mean, just when you look at some of the things they've done with Braun Strowman, aside from Brock Lesnar, who's been booked pretty well as a big guy in WWE, that's probably a comparison you can make between him and Lance Archer, at least to this point.
Yeah, and you bring up the TNT Championship Tournament. They released that from the beginning of the show, and we got, I think we got 8 well-deserving candidates for this tournament. Cody Rhodes will be facing Shawn Spears, Sammy Guevara against Darby Allin. But then on this episode, we got the other half of the bracket, which is Kip Sabian and Dustin Rhodes going up against Lance Archer and Colt Cabana are the two rest of the brackets. Do you think they made it too obvious when they released this bracket that the final's going to be Cody versus Lance Archer? And is that even a bad thing that it's that obvious?
I don't think it's obvious for a few reasons. One, the one good thing, or one of the good things, I should say, not the one good thing. One of the things that they're doing really well, and that they've always really kind of done well, is the storytelling. So, not so much the focus on the primary story, but the undertones and the other subtle storylines that go on underneath, like the main storyline. So, one of the things that they've obviously been building up is Lance Archer and Cody Rhodes. But the other thing that they've kind of been building up subtly has been Sammy Guevara and Darby Allin, and Sammy Guevara and Cody Rhodes having their type of their feud there. So I think that ultimately it might come down to Lance Archer and Cody. But I wouldn't be surprised if Darby Allin ends up being the one that's in the finals there, because in my opinion, that's the match I want to see most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
It's Darby Allin and Lance Archer.
Right. I agree. I actually said in our episode that whoever wins Sammy versus Darby will most likely win the whole thing. But that was before we learned that Lance Archer was going to be in it. I do think it's a little obvious that that the finals are Cody versus Lance Archer, because you already know Cody has the backstory with either Darby and Sammy to further that storyline to head to the finals. Yeah. But then Lance Archer, they're having this storyline with Cody and Archer. If Archer wins against Colt Cabana, he probably is going to face Dustin Rhodes. So you're furthering the storyline of Cody versus Archer anyway. This match, the finals, is at Double or Nothing. Cody's going to want to have a big match. This is his storyline heading into Double or Nothing. The first TNT Championship is going to be a big match. So I do think it's obvious. Is that a bad thing? Maybe not, because it furthers the storyline, and I think it might be the best match. Cody match is going to deliver on the big pay-per-views, but I agree with you. I think maybe Darby versus Lance Archer might be the best match. So either way, whoever comes out on the left side of the bracket, whether it's Cody, Sammy, Shawn Spears, or Darby, I think they're going to be facing Lance Archer, because that's obviously what they're setting up for. So, but after the announcement of the tournament brackets, we got a pretty good match here between Kenny Omega and Trent that almost went the time limit. Very good match. Trent Baretta looked strong again in a loss. I am starting to feel this guy is really the Shawn Michaels to Chuck Taylor being Marty Jannetty in this tag team. And I think Trent needs a singles run soon.
Trent needs a singles run, and Chucky T needs to find a gym. I said that a while ago. Granted, he hasn't been in action in quite some time, but yeah, Trent is definitely the money guy in this tag team. He's proven it time and time again. He's got the look. He's got the physique. He can wrestle. I mean, he's had some really good matches, especially this match. I mean, look, no matter what people want to say about Kenny Omega, if you want to like him, you don't want to like him, you want to criticize his work, you want to say he's overrated, whatever. He's definitely one of the very best in the business today. So if you're able to go in there and have a good match with this guy, and not only do it with him, but do it with other people every time they give you the opportunity to have a singles match, which Trent has done every time they've given him the ball, he's pretty much, been the guy who's been able to go in there and put on a good match, then, it's obvious. I mean, the writing's on the wall. This guy is going to be a star, I think, for AEW. Maybe not now, because obviously they don't need somebody right now, given the fact that they have a lot of good top guys, whether they're heels or faces. But don't be surprised if a couple of years from now Trent is either at the top of the pack in AEW, or if he decides to go elsewhere, whether it's NXT or WWE.
Yeah, I mean, he already went to WWE in the past. He's done his time in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So the question is whether or not he wants to just continue as the best friends, as he knows he could get singles matchups anyway. Like I said, I just think he needs a singles run, and maybe once this TNT Championship gets established, maybe he eventually gets into that title picture. But I would love to see him eventually down the road with a singles run. He looked great in this match. And Kenny, again, delivering another good match. Ever since that Iron Man match with Pac, he's just been delivering over and over and over again. So
yeah, and I think he's won maybe 7 in a row.
You're talking about Kenny.
Kenny, yeah. So
yeah,
I'm
think
pretty
so.
sure. So I haven't looked at the rankings in a while, but I got to imagine he's up there. And whether they're building him towards, um, a championship run at some point or a contendership run or whatever the case may be, they're definitely building him back up to be the guy that, they signed at the beginning, the guy that everybody expected, the best bout machine. So
Right.
looking forward to actually seeing him continue to go out there, put on good matches, and seeing him put into matches that are definitely more meaningful, especially now
Yeah.
because it seems like they're kind of putting the tag team titles on the back burner because of Hangman obviously hasn't been there a little in some time. So
Right. So it's good that Kenny is still having these singles runs. I believe he's number 4 in the ranking. Cody is 3. Darby Allin is number 5. Jake Hager is number 2. Jericho's number 1. And of course, the champion is Jon Moxley. Now, on the women's rankings, the number 1 contender was in the next match, and that was Hikaru Shida going up against Anna Jayy.
Anna Jayy.
Yep. A lot of people talking about Anna Jayy after this match. It wasn't a long match. It was only like 5.5, 6 minutes, but very impressive considering that she's still in training. She's in QT Marshall school. So she was good for me. She looked really good. And this was one of the better women's matches that we've seen, and Hikaru Shida delivering again. I think she's the best women's wrestler that AEW has right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, Hikaru Shida has definitely been probably the most consistent in the women's division. Obviously, that's one of the things that people have been most critical of is the women's division and the way it's been booked and the fact that, some of the matches have been a little clunky, a little, they tend to have some rough spots in them and some issues throughout. But this match I thought was good. It wasn't like a 5-star all-time great match, but especially for somebody like Anna Jayy making her debut and looking really good in it. And got a lot of people talking, which is the important thing. As long as people are talking about you, that's a good thing. You're getting some buzz, especially in a time like now. And a lot of people from the feedback that I was reading, either on Twitter or other social media outlets, definitely a lot of people were talking about her. So that's good.
Yeah, it definitely was. After this match, though, we did get a video package of Jake Hager and Jon Moxley promoting their no holds barred championship match, which is going to be happening in 2 weeks. I got to be honest, this might be my low light of the evening. The package itself wasn't bad, but you could tell Hager was definitely reading off of something. And it just kind of turned me off just a little bit because of that.
Well, not only that, but Hager went from the guy from being, Jericho's muscle, who never talked, who never had a match, who got criticized for never having matches, to the guy who now is challenging for the championship. So he went from literally probably not even being ranked to in the top tier challenging for the championship. Granted, he's a guy that came from WWE and he was fairly over there and a bigger name in the wrestling industry. And, he's got the MMA background, but, I don't think anybody realistically thinks he's going to beat Moxley for the championship. At least I don't. So,
No.
This is probably just one of those filler matches until they get to the main feud, which we don't really know what that's going to be yet. But
yeah, do you think to me, it's either going to be a Jericho rematch at Double or Nothing. All these singles matches with Kenny might set that up, but then what do you do with the tag titles, especially if Hangman's not going to be there? And Cody can't have the title shot because of his stipulation that he lost at Full Gear.
yeah,
Darby's probably going to be in the TNT Championship, so I don't think it's him. I'm thinking now that they're setting this up as a precursor to a Jericho Moxley rematch at Double or Nothing.
Well, you got to think it's that. The interesting thing in all of this, too, is MJF hasn't really done much at all. I mean, granted, he was on that one episode of Dynamite where he was gambling in the crowd. But I would have thought, if it was me, I would have thought that he was going to be the guy that was positioned to challenge Moxley. Only because it seemed like, based on everything we've seen so far, they're moving Cody out of that feud. He's obviously going to be moving into a feud with Lance Archer. Kenny Omega, he was tied up in the tag team division with Hangman. We know obviously that's put on the back burner. Chris Jericho's looks like he's going to be entering his feud with Matt Hardy. Obviously, everything that's going on in the world right now with this pandemic has changed, I'm sure, a lot of the things that they're trying to do. But I feel like what they're probably doing is trying to buy themselves some time. So putting Jake Hager in there in a match with Moxley, while it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, they're probably just doing it to push out his title run. So that way, hopefully, whatever ends up happening with Double or Nothing, maybe it does end up being a guy like MJF. But, to me, it's either Jericho or MJF. I can't really see anybody else challenging for the title.
Yeah.
Right now.
If MJF is self-isolating right now, it's probably not going to be him, especially now that he's dropped out of the top 5 because he hasn't had any matches. So, I mean, it sucks because it really seemed like that was the route they were going before this all happened. But one of the things that is still continuing because, despite what's going on in the outside world, is this buildup with Brodie Lee and the Dark Order. Another video package before the Dark Order 8 and 9 face the Natural Nightmares, where Brodie Lee is in a conference room talking to members of the Dark Order, and he asks one of them to refer to him as Mr. Brodie, and then yells at another guy for yawning, saying, "Don't ever yawn in front of me again. It shows weakness." So, before that line, he talks about how everything is closed. You shouldn't be tired because you're not really doing anything. So to me, it's like, unless you know Vince McMahon, you're probably not going to think this is a rib on Vince McMahon. But once you know Vince McMahon and his tendencies, this is a rib on Vince McMahon. So I'm not 100% sure if I like the direction of Brodie Lee as the Exalted One right now. I think it's good, but it's not perfect.
Yeah.
I think they need to tone it down with these Vince ribs because that just screams Huckster, Nacho Man, and Billionaire Ted from 1995, in my opinion.
Well, it's kind of a distraction, right? Because I mean, you bring in a guy like Brodie Lee who wants this opportunity because he wants to prove that he was underutilized in WWE. The more you do this, the more that you have him parodying Vince McMahon and acting like, trying to play off of whatever tendencies Vince has, the more of a distraction that is, because that's all people really are talking about. Every time you go and look up anything about, reviews, that's what they talk about. Oh, well, Brodie Lee did another parody of Vince McMahon. Is that really what he wants to be known as? I mean, he went to AEW to try and stand out, to try and be a guy that makes a difference and to prove to everybody that he could be a top tier guy outside of WWE, and he could have been a top tier guy at WWE, but they dropped the ball. So I feel like the more they do stuff like this, the more it's going to take away from him being successful in this position and in this character, and it's just going to kind of distract everybody.
Right. No, I totally agree. And one of the things that I thought about, and I texted you about this when we were discussing it, is the Dark Order is supposed to be a heel team.
Yep.
A lot of AEW fans are watching because it's an alternative to WWE, because they're sick of what Vince does to the booking and whatnot. And if you make Brodie Lee a parody of Vince McMahon, that's just going to get him over. And that's not the reaction you want for a heel tag team or a heel faction like the Dark Order. I mean, it's better than nothing. It's definitely an improvement. But the good thing that I do like what they're doing with Brodie Lee is he's a no-nonsense leader. And if you show any sign of weakness, he's not going to care much about it. Just like in this match with 8 and 9 against the Natural Nightmares, which they lost, Brodie Lee comes out and power bombs one of the members and then walks right back out. That's the good stuff. Yeah. That's the stuff I like. If they continue stuff like that, I'm all for him as the Exalted One. It's just the stuff that you could tell is Vince McMahon parody that I don't like. And hopefully they get these couple of weeks out of his system to just air it out. And then he can be, something more like an Exalted One, not this Vince parody.
Yeah. And I think that's important too. I think it's a little odd because, with the Dark Order, they obviously mentioned previously that it's a big international corporation. Like there's a mastermind behind it, which is obviously supposed to be Brodie Lee. I don't know if it's because of the character he played in WWE, being in the Wyatt family, and just the way that he acted there. But I'm having a hard time buying into the fact that he's supposed to be this evil genius type guy that's running the Dark Order. He doesn't
Right.
strike me as like a Hannibal Lecter, right? He doesn't strike, and I don't know if that's again because of what he did in the WWE, but to me, it's still the same guy. Like, you know what? It's not like physically he's changed. Like, it's the same beard, it's the same haircut. It's not like he's changed anything physically about himself, or really even like his attire. Granted, it's a little bit different, but it's not that far off from what he was doing with the Wyatt family. So I don't know. Something to me is just not clicking with it, and maybe it will eventually, and they'll make it work. But I don't know. Right now, it's just not clicking.
Right. Now, one thing that's getting a lot of mixed reviews is Matt Hardy in AEW right now. The segment from last week got some mixed reviews. We got a continuation of that with this video package with Chris Jericho. He's home enjoying a nice glass of a bubbly in his hot tub at home. Then he gets a visit from Vanguard 1, and Chris Jericho is trying to apologize to Vanguard 1, recruit him again with a baby t-shirt of the Inner Circle, but then Vanguard 1 flies away with a new t-shirt before Jericho releases the hounds on him. I like this video package. I thought it was very funny. I thought, it was a fun little video package that keeps Chris Jericho on television.
I thought it was okay. I mean, I know there's going to be a certain percentage of the fan base that likes this, and there's going to be a certain percentage that don't. It seems like people either are into the Matt Hardy stuff or they're not, and they don't get it, and they don't want to get it, and they don't like it. The other thing too that I'm seeing a lot of comments on when I go through like comments on the videos and social media and stuff is people keep saying, this kind of screams sports entertainment, and this is what we didn't want, and these are the things we don't want to see. You're going to have to take it with a grain of salt. Matt Hardy's not going to be for everybody. This character is not going to be for everybody. It's going to be pretty people are going to either decide they either really like it or they hate it. I don't think many people are going to be in the middle on this. So, we'll see what happens with it, but I personally didn't have a problem with this. It was a funny segment. It was what it was.
Right. I was laughing at the end where he's releasing the hounds and he's crying that the little bastard stole my t-shirt. That was funny. It was good. It was a good little segment. After that video package, we got an update on Nick Jackson. Him and Matt Jackson are, practicing in a ring, I guess at the Young Bucks household, asking if there's going to be a return date. Matt asks Nick if he's all right to get back in there. Nick says not yet. Nice and informative. Keep the Young Bucks on there. But then we get to the main event, and it is Cody and Darby Allin versus Sammy Guevara, Shawn Spears. A preview of what we could see on the TNT Championship tournament. Thought it was a great main event, great tag team match. Darby Allin looked good. Little hint of possibly a heel turn here at the end after Darby eating the pin, pushing away Cody and walking out. Do you sense a heel turn, or is this just him being competitive?
I think it's him being competitive. I don't know if we're going to get a heel turn because he's definitely one of the more over guys, but I definitely see this playing itself out in the tournament. We already know they have a past. We already know the story where, Darby took him to the limit and then Cody got the win back. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's like your semifinal from the left side of the bracket there. So, I mean, we'll see, but I thought this was a good match. I really liked the spot where, Sammy Guevara and Shawn Spears were gambling in the middle of the match, seeing how long they could hold up Darby Allin in the suplex position. That was cool. The coffin drop from that pole was pretty cool. I just thought it was a good match. Darby Allin to me is a guy that, and even Sammy Guevara to a certain extent, these are guys that really came from the independent scene, and they are delivering every single week, whether it's in the ring or just kind of their development of their characters. Darby Allin is a guy that I think is going to be one of the biggest stars in professional wrestling in a couple of years.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He's got a unique look. He's great in the ring. He could sell. He has very unique offense. The only thing we're not 100%. I was going to say the one thing that we're not 100% sure on yet is his promo work, because he hasn't really had time on the microphone yet. But his pre-produced stuff has been good from what we've seen in AEW. Yeah.
The vignettes have been very good that they've done to this point with Darby. And the other thing I was going to say is he's very smooth in the ring, and it's almost like he's smooth, but there's a grit to him. So when people talk about Ricochet, and the people that normally will criticize Ricochet, is what they'll say about him is he's too smooth. Like, it almost looks like it's acrobats, right? When you see Darby wrestle, he's smooth, but there's also like a certain level of stiffness and tenacity to his abilities. So, I think he's great.
Yeah, I totally agree. And possibly Shawn Spears getting the win here could be a precursor to him losing next week against Cody, and Sammy losing, or maybe Sammy's getting the win on Darby next week. I don't know. See, now that Lance Archer's in that tournament, that Sammy Darby match is a little bit more unpredictable. Unless Archer costs Cody the match and Shawn Spears advances, and then Cody returns the favor the following week against Colt. Yeah. That's the only way I see neither one of them making the finals. But I'm still saying Cody versus Archer in the finals, especially now that we've seen the brackets. So, highlight of the night, Ralph?
I'm going to say Anna Jay. I really am. I thought I'm being serious. I thought it was a good show, but when you're put in a spotlight like that, where you're expected to make your debut, and you deliver, where people are talking about you and saying how well you did. I mean, what I'll say is this: everybody else on the show did what they were supposed to do, right? They're all professionals. They've all been doing this a long time, and they all went out there and delivered to the best of their ability. This girl was put in a position where she was making her debut on primetime TV, on live TV, where if you fuck up, everybody's going to see it, and there's no coming back from that. And she held her own and delivered. So why the hell not?
Yeah, she did deliver, and it was a good match. I don't know if I put it the highlight. To me, the highlight was the Lance Archer debut and just seeing Marko Stunt get thrown around like a rag doll for 10 minutes. That was my highlight. Not saying I, don't like Marko Stunt, but I think Marko Stunt was used perfectly in this situation. Lance Archer was used perfectly in this situation. The commentary sold it perfectly. I really can't find anything wrong with that. That was like how a squash match should be done.
Yep.
In perfection. So let us know what you guys think of the highlights, the lowlights, and your overall thoughts of AEW Dynamite in the comments below. Don't forget to share us over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPV Podcast. And for news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. For Ralph Valenti via Skype, my name's Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching The Squared Circle.